Right, here we go.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Equality Tasmania Federal Election Forum. I can see we've got a lot of people in here. We'll see if we can highlight some of our speakers. I'll get Jenny possibly to do that. We'll do some introductions as we go around. My name is Ash Russell. I am the Acting President of Equality Tasmania, and I'll be chairing today. Want to say a quick hi around the room, the other presenters. I might pick out, I'll get Jenny to say hi first.
Hi everyone, my name's Jenny. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Secretary of Equality Tasmania.
And also from Equality Tasmania, we've got Rodney. You're muted, Rodney.
Hi everyone, Rodney Chrome, hey him.
And we'll go along my screen. Peter, want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. I'm the independent candidate for Franklin. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming along, especially at late notice. Andrew.
Yeah, good day, everyone. It's Andrew Wilkie, the independent member for Clark, coming to you from my home in South Hobart.
Thank you, Andrew. Heidi.
Hello, everyone. My name's Heidi, she, her. I'm the Labor candidate for Clark.
Thank you, Heidi. I'm not quite sure, but we can't see your camera, I don't think.
Really? Oh, dear.
We love technology. It's definitely works every time. And last but not...
Sorry.
No. Last but not least, Nick.
Hello, folks. Nick McKim, Greens Senator and Senate candidate. Pronouns are he, him, coming to you from unceded Moanena country.
Thank you very much, Nick. Well, you've led me a bit into how I'd like to start our meeting today. Welcome to our forum. As some of you have noticed in the chat, we do have microphones and speakers and everything disabled for everyone, as this is a Teams webinar, so we can hear from our candidates. And there is definitely opportunity to ask questions, but a lot of people have put questions in already, so we'll be asking those for you. And feel free to put things in the Q&A, and Jenny will monitor those for us and let us know throughout the meeting if there's more questions that relate to the topics. So I would like to always begin our meeting with an acknowledgement of country. So I do ask everyone to begin today by reflecting on the land that you're on today, the people that have cared for it for uncountable generations. I'm coming to you today from Nipaluna, Hobart, on the banks of Timtumali Mananya, the Derwent River. And as Nick mentioned, this is the land of the Moanena people who did not survive colonisation. So I repay respects to their past elders and also to the present elders of the Palawa people who continue to care for our beautiful country. We at Equality Tasmania acknowledge that Australia is stolen land, and it is governed by a structure put in place by the colonisers. And we are about to go into a federal election which may not result in Aboriginal people or queer people or other demographics getting equal representation or having their voices heard, which is why it's so important for us to meet our candidates and speak to them to see where they stand on these important issues that affect our community and our country, and to see what they're willing to do to ensure that we all have a safe and equitable society. Now, I want to have Rodney say a couple of words first about why we're here and our history of running these forums.
Thanks, Ash. And it's great to see so many people online. Thanks for joining the forum. I too would like to pay my respects to Aboriginal custodians of the land that we're on, including the Pirinil Aplu people, where I am, up near Devonport. Now, as Ash said, Equality Tasmania has a history of conducting forums in lead up to elections. We've done it for about 25 or 30 years with two main purposes in mind. The first one is obviously to help inform LGBTIQA plus voters and their friends and allies about the different policies and records that the parties and independents have on our issues. And the second purpose, which I think in the long term is just as important, and that is educating candidates about the issues that we face. So that when, if candidates are fortunate enough to be elected, then they take into the Parliament a greater understanding of our lives and what we need to be treated fully equally. And I've got no doubt that this evening's forum will serve both those purposes as much as ever. And it's great to see, like I said, so many people online. Sad that Bridget Archer couldn't make it this evening. That means we don't have anyone from the Liberal Party, despite our best efforts to try and find other candidates. But if anyone has a pressing question that they would have for Bridget, I might be able to help answer it because I have worked a bit with her on various issues, along with other candidates. Thanks, Ash.
Thank you, Rodney. And Bridget also did mention that she's very happy to take questions from the community. So let us know if that's something you'd like to do, or we can pass them on, or you can contact her directly with the email and phone, which are available online. Now, to begin tonight, I'm going to get each of our speakers to give a little intro to themselves, their party, some things that they may have done for the LGBT community already, and what they might be planning to do if elected or re-elected. So I think I'd like to start alphabetical order with, I think I comes first for independents, does it? Or is it G for Greens? I don't know my alphabet. Why don't we start with you, Andrew? Would you be able to give us your, I'll tell you if you're going a bit long, 3 to 5 minutes intro.
I think I comes after G, doesn't it? But A comes after N, so I'll go in front of Nick. Hey, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough. I'm pleased Rodney, in his preamble, made the point that people should be here to learn. And I'm the first to acknowledge that the issues affecting the LGBTIQ plus community are complex, and it's a very broad range of issues. So I'm hoping to learn tonight as much as to tell you where I stand. By way of some opening remarks, and this was reported in the Mercury the other day after the pledge signing, I do lament the fact that we had to have a pledge signing the other day. I lament the fact that we even have to have a candidates forum tonight to talk about these matters. I would have thought the sorts of issues that we will hopefully discuss tonight would have been dealt with a long time ago, but they haven't been dealt with, and hence we have to have this. We have to have this forum. It's also lamentable that we don't have a representative of the Liberal Party, particularly Bridget. Can I just say that I've got to know Bridget over a number of years now in the House of Representatives, and you will not find a more thoroughly decent human being in the House of Representatives. And I'll give a plug for Bridget tonight that if she is re-elected, I'm sure you can count on her as a strong ally within her political party. I've been invited to say a few words about my track record. I would hope that my track record is known. Although the issues confronting the LGBTIQ plus community are a hell of a lot more than marriage equality, I am pleased nonetheless to reflect on the fact that I think I was a leader, one of the many leaders within the Parliament on the push for marriage equality many years ago now, a couple of Prime Ministers ago now. And I can genuinely say that one of the happiest days in my 15 years in Parliament was the day the House of Representatives voted to amend the Marriage Act to legalise same-sex marriage. And one of my favourite photos of my 15 years in Parliament was when Cathy McGowan, I think Rebecca Sharkey and Adam Bandt and I had smuggled in a rainbow flag and held it up in the House of Representatives. It got told off by the Speaker, I would add. Apparently there's some rule about you're not allowed to show other flags other than the Australian flag and the First Nations people's flags within the House of Representatives. They were difficult days, of course, for everyone, and the fact that we had to have a vote across the country, a vote on whether or not same-sex couples were the equal of other couples, I think was a very upsetting thing for a great many people. And I was pleased to, at the request of Rodney, to take the matter to the High Court and to try and have the postal vote overturned as a misuse of public money, because at the end of the day, all we had to do back then was just vote on the thing. And if we'd had a conscience vote on the matter, it would have been dealt with there and then, and we would have saved a couple $100 million. My claim to fame since is that I have a perfect record in the High Court. Every time I've gone there, I've failed or lost. But I make fun of something at the time was not funny at all. As far as the future goes, look, I've got a list here of a dozen points that I hope are made tonight and discussed tonight. But I think I could summarise that dozen points with one point, and that is, if we had a Bill of Rights in this country guaranteeing that every member of the community was equal and had a fundamental legal right to equality in law and in practice, I think that would go a long way to addressing the sorts of issues that preoccupy us all tonight. I've tabled a private member's bill now twice for a Bill of Rights. And you can call it what you want. You call it Charter of Rights or Charter of Rights and Responsibilities. It doesn't matter. But it was lamentable the fact that both times it received no support from either major party. They did it in Victoria after much controversy, and I suggest that if we were to do the same at the federal level. But interestingly, most Australians don't know we don't have any Bill of Rights. I think when Australians talk about a Bill of Rights, they I don't know, they must be watching too many American movies. But we have almost no rights enshrined in law in this country. I think there are, I think it's 4 rights to equality safeguarded by the Commission, but they're very, very narrow. And you know, there are no laws, for example, about against hate speech and vilification against members of the LGBTIQ plus community. So if I could summarise my vision for the future, and should I be re-elected into the House of Representatives, one thing I will continue to pursue is exactly that, a Bill of Rights for everyone, for all Australians. And then as we get into the discussion, I'm sure we'll talk about all of the points of detail. There are so many issues on my notepad here about banning conversion practices, intersex law reform, and all sorts of other things. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Ash.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'll go back to my poorly done alphabet and backtrack to G. Nick, for the Greens, are you able to give us your introduction?
Yeah, thanks, Ash. I thought you were going to say G for George, Peter there, but I'll take the G for Greens. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks very much for having me. And when Rodney was going through the history of these forums, I think I was at my first one probably more than 20 years ago. So I have been to a few of these. The Greens have got a long and proud record of fighting for rights for LGBTIQA plus Australians. That includes being the only political party in this country that can say that we voted every vote in every parliament every time for marriage equality, and it was a great day when marriage equality was achieved in Australia, albeit these kinds of issues should never be put to a popular vote as they were. We've also got a long and proud record of fighting against people who would seek to undermine rights, fundamental human rights that we're discussing today, including standing with the broader Hobart community when Posey Parker was run out of town, and what a great day that was, and fighting against TERFs and transphobes everywhere that we come across them. I had the privilege of tabling the first marriage equality or explicit marriage equality legislation in Tasmania. I can't exactly remember when that was. It was a fair while ago. Rodney, with a much better memory than mine, will probably be able to remind me of the date. But I did work closely with Rodney when I was the Greens Justice spokesperson in the Tasmanian Parliament.
2005 it was, Nick.
Oh, thank you, Rodney. I knew you'd remember. But we worked closely on that. We got legal advice from Professor George Williams that, in fact, it was constitutionally appropriate or allowable, in his view, for states to equality. So we did, and it was one of the great regrets of my political career that was so narrowly defeated in the Tasmanian House of Assembly. It would have put Tassie on the world map for all the right reasons. Similar to what Andrew said, massive supporters, and have been for decades, that's the Greens I'm talking about, of a Charter of Rights. We'd prefer to see it constitutionally enshrined, given the difficulties of achieving constitutional reform in Australia that we've unfortunately seen again in the last couple of years. We'd be and have attempted to have a Charter of Rights enshrined in the statute books, in legislation. And in fact, when I was the Federal Greens Justice spokesperson, we moved for an inquiry in the Senate into the form that such a Charter of Rights could take. And again, it's an all too familiar tale, but regrettable that neither of the major parties would support even an inquiry into what such a Charter of Rights would look like. Look, I've got a range of policy specifics that I'd like to discuss, but I've spoken too long in generalities. So, as Andrew said, I'm happy to leave those to the questions, but I do want to just acknowledge that LGBTIQA plus Australians still face significant discriminations in schools, at work, in public life, assessing government services, and we have always and will always be strong supporters of removing all those discriminatory elements to public life and having laws in Australia that protect everyone equally. Thanks, Ash.
Thank you very much, Nick. I'd like to move to our other independent here next. Peter, would you be able to give us a short intro? Thank you.
Yes, hi. I'm talking to you from Nipaluna, Hobart, but my normal home is in the Huon Valley, in the land of the Malakadi people. I do not have a long and proud history in defending the rights of the LGBTIQA plus community. I come from an era and a generation where there was a great deal of misunderstanding and fear. And I should say that I speak from, when I was young, I was sodomized or raped at school. And so I grew up with a great deal of fear of homosexuality or anything that was sort of other than what I was brought up to think of as being normal. And of course, being normal is not normal at all. Normal is just a way of discriminating against everyone who doesn't sort of fit a societal mold. So I come from that position. I also come from a generation where the use of the term queer was a term of abuse rather than a term of in which people could use to identify themselves as a particular group. So I apologize for that, but the journey has been a long one. And I've got to say, having met up with Ash the other day, I feel like I've already sort of done a lot of my learning. It just needs to be locked in. Can I say, though, that my life was as a reporter, and as a young reporter, I made a decision very early on that I would try to judge everything by the UN Declaration of human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And so my position is quite well explained within the preamble. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and alienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind. And the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human right should be protected by the rule of law. So I come to this particular issue of believing that that should encompass everybody. And I abhor the idea that members of the community who may not fit what is seen as the normal social norm should be excluded, discriminated against, harassed, and often the subject of violence. I long for the day when our sexuality, our gender, our identity, our race, our religion, and all those other things that identify us as individuals should no longer be of any interest to anybody in the community other than the individual themselves. And the only time I think that that should be interfered with is when an individual actually requests it, needs it, has trouble with their identity, and then they should be offered help. So I filled in the equality. I took a while to go through very carefully the Equality Tasmania survey, and Ash took a lot of time to come and talk to me and take me through some of the things that I struggled to understand and come to terms with. Well, not come to terms with in the sense of whether I personally accepted it or not, but to come to terms with so that I actually understood what was implied by the survey. And I'm glad to say that with Ash's help, I was able to tick all the correct boxes in the end. So there you are. I admit the fact that I have a great deal of ignorance. I admit the fact that I have not done what I might have been able to over the years to help the LGBTQIA plus community, but I am more than willing, should I be elected, lucky enough to be elected in Franklin, to support Equality Tasmania in all its outcomes and aims.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for sharing some of your personal experiences, and also the plug for our survey, which we are putting up on our website as people fill out. So you are able to see how Peter and how other politicians are willing to commit or vote in certain ways for our community. Thank you. Last but not least, Heidi, would you like to do your introduction?
I sure would, Ash. I'm sorry that you guys can't see me. That's unfortunate. Thank you for having me here tonight, and I'm very, very proud to be here as a Labor candidate. I'll keep my intro fairly short, but I think while it is regrettable that we even have to have this sort of forum, there is no more important time to be having it, because across the world, LGBTQI+, rights and basic existence are under attack for political gain, particularly our queer community and our trans brothers and sisters. Trans rights are human rights, and that is something I will always champion. But I think from a Labor perspective, something I'm really, really passionate about is LGBTQI+ healthcare, and not just accepting the status quo, but making sure we're moving forward in research and recognition and education for healthcare providers. And that is something I can very proudly say that Labor has taken very seriously in the last term of government, and I'd love to see us be able to do more. On a personal level, I have always fought for the LGBTQI+ community. I will continue to fight for the LGBTQI+ community. I see you and I stand not just alongside you, but with you. So, and I'm really looking forward to tonight's forum. A bit nervous, but excited.
Thank you very much, Heidi. I believe that is all of our introductions. So we have a bit of a lay of the land, seeing where each of our candidates are coming from. Now, I would like to open up and ask some questions of our four guests. Please stick your hand up or let me know in some way if you would like to jump in and answer any of these. So we have a list of questions that the community have put to us to ask you. We also have more questions coming through in the chat and in the Q&A box as we're going through today. Now, I do want to start actually with one that seems to be coming up in quite a few of the questions that we've got. There is quite a lot of a political worldwide discourse, a large anti-trans movement happening right now. So I would like to ask our candidates, how are you or your party going to respond to those who use this anti-LGBTIQA+ rhetoric, particularly the anti-trans one, as a bit of a political football in Australia? Andrew, I saw a hand go up. You're muted, Andrew.
There you go. I'm smarter than I look. Now I'm happy to make a start on that, and the premise of the question is quite correct. Not just with this recent court case in London, but also I noticed that Queensland has banned hormone therapies for people under the age of 18. So it is politically, it is more widespread than any one country. And there are undercurrents within our own country. I think a good start would be to have legislated at the federal level hate speech and vilification protections for the for trans peoples, but for the LGBTIQ+ community more broadly. It strikes me as it's obviously a glaring gap in our legislation that there is no protection like that. I mean, yes, there are protections as far as employment and those sorts of things, but not just in the way we talk among ourselves and with each other. So I think that would be a very, very positive start. But you know what, Ash, I think it comes back to something even more fundamental than a law. It's a change of perspective in this country. You know, sometimes I feel like it's 1825 or 1950, but it doesn't feel like 2025. And I think one of the reasons for that is the lack of political leadership at the most senior levels across the political spectrum, and the fact that some political operatives they don't just want to sort of push their own personal ideological point of view. They also want to score points off it, regardless of how deeply hurtful that is for some people. So, you know, I think we need stronger leadership at the federal level. You know, the current government's better than the current opposition. Nick, the Greens are fabulous on this stuff. I'm pleased to report that on the crossbench, there's currently 19 crossbenches, by the way, in the House of Representatives. And there's a few rogues among us, but I think you'll find most of us are. I wasn't talking about the four Greens there, Nick. I was talking about a couple of other rogues. But I think you are seeing an emergence of a more tolerant group of people, certainly on the crossbench. But I think political leadership would go some considerable way to address this. I come back to my point I made in my preamble right at the very start. The fact that we had to have a public pledge signing the other day is just, it's upsetting. It's really upsetting. It's upsetting for me as someone who thinks we have progressed so little as a country. It must be incredibly upsetting for trans people. Not that we're rallying behind them, but that we need to rally behind them. So I'll, my answer started with the need for legislation for national hate speech and vilification protection. It'll end with a call for leadership from our political class. The problem is whether it be Heidi, Peter, Nick, or me, we're on side. The challenge is to get the rest on side.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Peter, you've got your hand up. Same question?
Yeah, very briefly, and this is going to sound like a plug, and I suppose it is. The bigger the crossbench, the more Greens, the more independents, the more chance we have of not only holding the line, but of pressing forward with the legislative changes that are needed. I think you're right. I think with what we see in the United States, what we see in Europe, and what we see to some extent lagging behind in Australia, which is a pushback against rights of many communities, especially though the LGBTIQA plus community, need to be not just protected, but need to be advanced. And the more independence we get, the stronger that will be, because we will actually hold the centre.
Thank you, Peter. So we've heard about legislative actions, culture changes, and a bit of a government reshuffle. Nick, do you have anything to add to that? I don't want to spend too long on one question before we go to the next.
No, I'll just be brief, Ash. Thanks. Transphobia and hatred of trans folks is a characteristic of fascism, and as such it needs to be named up and it needs to be called out and it needs to be resisted with everything that we've got every time it arises. And this one's pretty personal for me because I've got a trans stepson, Jasper, who's been, like many trans folks, has been subject to vilification and violence. And I and the Greens stand with trans folk, and we wrap our arms around trans folk and we offer them all the love and support that they need and deserve.
Thank you. Heidi, as well?
Yeah, thank you. I thought I'd just jump in because I think a really important point here is this sort of rhetoric and these sort of laws make everybody less safe. What we've seen in the UK, it makes trans women less safe, it makes trans men less safe, it makes cis women less safe. The only people it doesn't make less safe are cis men. And I think on that point that, in my opinion, there needs to be a cultural change, yes, but it's about a whole of government approach with making sure that the trans community and the broader LGBTQI plus community are consulted and visible in our lawmaking. And I agree with Nick that we need to stand up and push back at every possible opportunity.
Thank you all. Now, we've kind of mentioned the discourse and how we might ask candidates to change that, or what they might put forward to change that. But if we move to some specific actions, we've had quite a few questions come in about our youth, especially our trans youth. We've had questions that have come our way about, so you can see one in the Q&A right now, about healthcare, about schools, about rural LGBTQA plus youth. Now, we could spend hours talking about this because it is quite a large and serious topic, but I think I want to simplify and ask our candidates, what are you or your party willing to do for our LGBTQA plus youth?
Well, again, I'll make a start. There's so many layers to this. There's not one single policy. Excuse me. I mentioned at the start about conversion practices. They should be banned. I mean, that's just barbaric. That's like throwing witches in the river and seeing if they, I'm sorry, this is a brutal analogy, but it's a bit like that. So identity conversion should be banned. Practices should be banned. And I just think whether it be youth or older Australians, the whole, like access to safe and inclusive services should be provided right across the spectrum, whether it be in our schools at any level, including quite junior schools, through our health and reproductive care, through our disability care, our aged care. And I reckon a really positive step that would normalise what some people think is abnormal would be, for example, gender affirmation procedures being fully covered in Medicare. The fact that it's not covered, that a range of services there are not covered, and it comes out of someone's own pocket, and I don't know if health insurance helps out at all. That alone just says that everything about trans people is abnormal. It should be as normal as a Medicare rebate to go see a GP, or the Medicare rebate to see a specialist doctor. If there's one thing, and I'll push for this in the next Parliament should I be re-elected, I will push hard that gender affirmation procedures be covered in full by Medicare. Not just because people need that support, but I think it, more than a lot of things, would send a really powerful message to the community that these matters are not odd, they're not abnormal, they're not out of the ordinary. It's as routine as seeing a GP.
Thank you, Andrew. That one is definitely an important issue for our community right now. So thank you for raising the medicalisation and how we wish that these things were considered on Medicare. I'm going to write that one down and come back to you if you're elected. Staying on the question of our youth, does anybody else wish to contribute what you are willing to do for our LGBT youth?
I'll jump in. Oh, sorry, Nick, you were hitting the button.
Just quickly jump in, Ash, if that's okay. No, you go. Sorry, I'll go there. Then you can go. Really quick, Andrew, on conversion practices. Absolutely committed to ensuring that gender affirming care is free and publicly accessible. We would fund professional development in our education sector to enable every school to offer programs on LGBTIQA plus inclusion on an annual basis, and also we'd create inclusive guidelines and curriculums for schools that would promote inclusivity. Look, ultimately, this is, the way we look after LGBTIQA plus young people is a subset of how we address the issues that we're talking on a broader societal level, but there's no doubt that there's a lot of young folks who are very vulnerable and require extra supports.
Thank you very much. Jump in, Peter.
No, basically, between Andrew and Nick, they've covered the areas that I would cover, so I won't take that much further. I'm absolutely with them both, and the banning of conversion therapy for us is just as a start would be an extraordinarily good start.
Thank you. And did you want to add to this, Heidi?
Yeah, I'll just jump in really quickly. I grew up in a regional town, and I have seen firsthand that the isolation and vulnerability that LGBTQI plus youth face in rural communities. And I think a huge piece of the puzzle, which once again I'm really passionate about, is extending healthcare and knowledge into our communities, not just in the cities, but in our regions. And I know that that is something that Labor has been focused on in the last term of government. I'd love to see us do more, obviously, but just improving the knowledge of our healthcare professionals in regional communities is something that's really important to me and something that I would push for.
Thank you very much. Well, we've had some more questions come through in the Q&A as well. And some of the questions that we've had sent in earlier are a bit to do with the discrimination that you mentioned, conversion practices, but specifically to do with discrimination in being allowable in faith-based schools and institutions. Tasmania has some fantastic laws that do not allow discrimination on your gender, sexuality in any institution, whether faith-based or not. But Australia does not have Australia-wide protection for that. So I'd like to ask the candidates, would you oppose any attempt to introduce these religious freedom laws that enable discrimination, or what would you do to ensure that our nation protects LGBTQA plus people in faith-based schools and services? You're muted again, Andrew.
Sorry. Ash, I've been very outspoken about this over some time. The proposed religious discrimination protections that were floated by the previous government were clearly unacceptable. It is clearly unacceptable to give additional rights to one group of people at the expense of another group of people. I mean, that's what was being proposed, that some people of faith be given additional rights at the expense of other members of the community. I mean, that's just illogical. So, you know, I was outspoken at the time, and I certainly wouldn't support anything like that in the future. Nor would I support anything at a federal level that has the effect of watering down Tasmania's nation-leading anti-discrimination protections. Nor would I support anything that is seeking to address a purported problem, which isn't a problem. We don't have a problem in Tasmania. I don't think in all the time I've been in this job, I've been approached by one faith-based school complaining about their right to enrol students or not, or their right to recruit teachers or not. You know, this is a debate about a non-issue in this state. And for a state that for so long was a laggard when it came to so many relevant laws, I'm proud of the fact that we're now a leader and I'll protect it. I'll never support anything that waters down Tasmania's protection, and I will never support any legislation in the Parliament that gives some people extra rights at the expense of others.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Heidi, did you want to add to that?
I'll just jump in really quickly. Sorry, my mic was muted. The only thing I would add to that is that we have the strongest anti-discrimination, some of the strongest anti-discrimination laws in the country. And I think the value of us as Tasmanians and having a voice in the federal parliament is we can take the lessons and learnings from our state legislation federally. And that is what I would take to the federal party, is the value of the laws we have here.
Thank you, Heidi. Nick, did you want to talk about the faith-based discrimination?
Yeah, well, I would oppose, as Andrew said, any such attempts to give one group of people rights at the expense of any other group, including LGBTIQA plus folks, and cast iron guarantee that we wouldn't vote for anything that overrode Tasmania's Anti-Discrimination Act. I mean, the last thing I'll say is that, I mean, Andrew's right, this isn't a problem that's is a real world issue that people come to us with, but what this is actually one of the major fronts in the culture wars in this country, and it's the culture wars that are being waged by the far right, and they are using LGBTIQA plus people as, you know, prepared to throw them under a bus so that they can fight culture wars because they believe it's in their own political benefit to do so, and that is an utter disgrace.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing that. I do want to build off something you just said there, Nick. Oh, sorry, Peter, would you like to add?
We're in a sort of furious agreement. I think if Tasmania has nation-leading laws, that's not a bad place to start. And I refer you back to the UN Declaration of Human Rights as well. But I'm looking at the messages coming down, and it's quite clear. This is where we need to hear from the community. The anti-discrimination laws don't work, though. Look at the current investigation in the Tasmanian Parliament. Enrolling my queer child into faith-based schools was challenging. They may not have a policy, but they do have practice. I think it seems to me that we might be doing well, but we need to hear from the community about how we can do better.
And then how we can learn and do better and take that up to the national level, I'd hope as well. Because the community, yes, the community is right. Although we do have these fantastic laws, sometimes in practice, they're not coming through the way that they're intended. I did want to build off one thing that Nick was saying earlier, though. Thank you, everyone, for answering that question. And you were talking a bit about the culture wars that this can devolve into and how people are using LGBTQA plus community in their culture wars, creating non-issues when those issues don't exist. So I want to ask of our candidates, a question from our community was that, do you believe that the government has a responsibility to regulate the media outlets who may be presenting our queer identities in this culture war manner, framing us as mentally ill or some sort of gender epidemic or something like that? Do you think that is the responsibility of the government to regulate that?
I'm the first to promote free speech, but not if it promotes violence or hate or vilifies people. So there must be a point at which governments have to say that is not acceptable.
Where does that point lie for you, Andrew?
Oh, sorry, Ash, did you hear what I said?
Sorry, I was about to ask, is there a point at which that lies for you, Andrew, where that is unacceptable?
Well, yes, if saying something promotes violence or hate or vilifies a group of people, I think that is unacceptable. I mean, you won't find a stronger advocate for freedom of speech than me. But there's got to be responsibilities which comes with that freedom, surely.
I might just jump in here very quickly, Ash. I think my personal opinion is that the government has a duty of care to make sure that there is not the allowance of hate speech to run rampant through the media. I think we are facing a new age where it is running rampant through social media, and how governments deal with that across the world is a really, really complex thing that I don't think we've figured out as a society yet. But I would say that there does need to be a solution, particularly in the social media space. We haven't figured out what it is, but I'd like to see a Labor government, or any government really, work towards that solution.
Thank you both for answering that one. Following on from something Peter was saying about listening to the community, not just in the chat of this meeting, but in general, I'd like to ask all our candidates how you will make sure that the Tasmanian LGBTQA plus population, that our voices are heard at a federal level, because our community quite often finds that we are missed off a lot of national level consultations, and so our Tasmanian LGBT community doesn't get to be as heard as they need to be. So what would you do to make sure our voices are heard at that federal level?
I'm happy to jump in to save Andrew from having to be the first responder in all of these questions. I offer that as a kindness, Andrew, if you will. But look, firstly, governments need to show leadership. Oh, Emily, thank you for pointing that out. I did read out a fantastic speech that Emily wrote, and it was my privilege to do that. Emily, thanks again for writing such a terrific speech. Governments have got to show leadership here, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that governments need to do, but a couple of things to ensure that community gets a greater voice is firstly make sure that the LGBTIQA plus community right around the country, including here in Lutruwita, Tasmania, is properly funded so that you can actually work within the community to generate consensus views of the community that then you have the capacity to make sure that those views are heard through the national conversation and also into the parliament. And it critically, in terms of consultation, every single government department needs to have programs run through it to ensure that leaders in those departments understand LGBTIQA plus issues, and also that they are required to consult with community when programs are being developed and advice is being prepared for government.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you, Emily, as well. That is a first-class example of a Tasmanian voice being heard in Parliament. Andrew?
Hey, Ash, can I just make a point? I'm going to challenge the premise of that question a little bit, actually. I don't think you'd find a more effective voice on the national stage than Rodney Croome. And with 12 senators, the same number as New South Wales and Victoria and Queensland, I think we've got a pretty loud voice in Canberra. In fact, the people who are joining in tonight may not be aware of this, that electorates in Tasmania for the lower house are actually have much less people. In fact, my electorate has about half the number of voters as my colleague Rebecca Sharkey. I think she's got about 120,000. I've got 74,000. Sorry, a quick history lesson here. Because we're protected by the Constitution that Tasmania never have less lower house seats than we had at Federation. So we had 5 at Federation, so we've still got 5. Even though the mainland has grown much faster, we probably should have 3 or 4 House of Representative seats. And on a pro rata basis, we probably should have 2 or 3 senators. So we actually have a loud voice in Canberra, whether it be senators, members of the House of Representatives, or activists on the national stage like Rodney. The challenge, I suppose, is how do we use all that? You know, how do we use that disproportionate political representation? And there, I think, is a challenge to the community to put the weights on. And in fairness to you, Heidi, the ALP is very good on a lot of this stuff. So, full marks. The Greens are very good on all this stuff, full marks. But there's still a lot of Tasmanian parliamentarians who are hopeless on all this stuff. So the challenge there is to keep the political pressure on them to lift their game.
Thank you, Andrew. And I do actually appreciate the little history lesson. I wondered why we had so much representation. Now we just need to get the LGBT voices to be amplified there as well, like you said. Peter, I think you put your hand up next.
Well, I'd like to say I'm learning as I go. I'd like to say this was an original idea of mine, but it's not. Again, it comes out of the comments. This is good. Being fully counted in the census would be a good start. Says the next person, yes, acknowledgement in the sentence, in the census. Says the next person, amen. I think that's a bloody good idea. I'll be going for that.
Thank you, Peter. The census was raised a few times in our questions as well, because it is counting adult LGBTQ plus people for the first time, but not those under 16. So we're not going to have accurate knowledge of our queer youth. Heidi. If you're talking, you're muted, Heidi.
Sorry, technical issues there. I am in agreement with both Andrew Wilkie and Nick McKim that we have a mighty voice here in Tasmania, but funding is still important to make sure that it is heard. I'd like to see more funding come to Tasmania. And yeah, I'll keep it short. I am very grateful that we will be counted, that the LGBTQI plus community will be counted in the next census. That will be, like, data collection is so important. So that's, I think, a really good thing.
Thank you. Now, I've been reminded by my screen that we have 5 minutes left in our meeting. So I'd like to finish off with some quick fire question or two. Yes or no around the room. Do you support a human rights charter?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and I've moved it twice in the House of Reps.
That's a flex. Nice.
I'm humble enough to admit when I don't know enough about something. So I don't know enough, but I'll go do some reading.
Fantastic. Thank you. Do our candidates support a ministerial portfolio being put together specifically for the LGBTQ plus population?
Yes,
and equity.
Yes, and make it a cabinet position.
Yes, agreed with that cabinet position.
Yes, agreed.
Yes, I know it's something that Tasmanian Labor took to the last state election, but I also think a whole of government approach and consultation in all lawmaking is really important across portfolios.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I'd like to just finish off our last few minutes by allowing everybody to give a few words if they'd like. So if elected or re-elected, why should we vote for you? What are you, I feel like you've given so much to us already, but give us your closing words on why we should vote for you as our LGBTQ plus population. What's your final, giving us the goodbye sentence?
I'll just jump in there and start. Honestly, I reckon any of the people who are here as candidates at the forum would be well worthy of a vote. You've heard us all, I think, champion the community and champion LGBTIQA plus rights. As for the Greens, we'll proudly stand on our record, and that record will extend into the future as far as we can make it, and we'll always be here for the community.
I will say that I have not yet proved myself a great friend of this community, but I do undertake to take up this issue. And the first thing I will do after being elected, or as soon as I can after being elected, I would love to meet up with you, Rodney, and explore these issues further so I could get greater understanding.
I might just jump in. I've lost my train of thought, but I think I will end by saying that I will always fight for this community, elected or not. It is so important. And further to that, I think having young progressive voices within the ALP and within the major parties is a really important thing.
And Ash, I'll just simply say people know where I stand. They can make their choice about me one way or the other. I would point out that there's two obvious things that haven't been addressed tonight because we've run out of time, but it's important to me. One is intersex law reform. It's not acceptable that only the ACT has laws ensuring that people must be old enough to make their own decision before intersex surgical procedures are undertaken. And the other point I would make is we must, as a country, stand up to Trump and his pushback against DEI.
Thank you very much, everyone. Those are some fantastic closing sentiments. And you're right, Andrew, there's many topics that we weren't able to touch on. Those two are some very big ones as well. We have had many questions come through the chat. So I'd like to encourage everybody who's come along today or anyone who's watching along later to please reach out and ask these candidates or other candidates any questions that you have not had sufficiently answered today. Their details are available online, and if you can't get in touch with anyone, get in touch with us at Equality Tasmania and we'll see what we can do. Because these candidates are here to represent you, to represent our community and our population, and they will answer those questions for you. And we urge you to vote for somebody that aligns with your values and who will do things for you in government that will support you, your life and our community. I want to raise just a reminder that Equality Tasmania has surveyed everybody about what they will do for the LGBTQA plus community. We will be putting those responses from candidates up on our website as we get them. So keep an eye on that over the next week. And And thank you very much, everybody, for coming along today. I think I'll end it there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ash.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it. Bye, folks.